You will, Alvarez said, after it's cataloged. For now, please remain in the manager's office. You're not under arrest at this moment, but don't leave. She hated rooms she didn't own. She hated being contained. She moved like... The air had thinned, and Alvarez escorted her with the politeness of a guard who knows dignity is easier to maintain than repair. Back in the ballroom, the MC moved the program forward with the kind of professional warmth that calms a herd. People whispered behind napkins. People always whisper. But paddles still rose. The mission sat larger than the scandal. I could have cried from the plain, sturdy decency of that. Ward's exhale finally arrived. You handled that, he murmured. We handled that, I said. Thank you for not needing a speech. He tilted his head, half smile. You trained me. A police team stepped into the side corridor with the quiet of people who didn't need volume to be believed. Evidence bags, body cams. They let Alvarez walk them through the timeline. They let counsel outline the internal controls that had tripped. One officer asked me to describe the napkin, the swap, the waitress's approach. I spoke in the clean sentences that belonged to reports and recovery. My hands didn't shake. I hadn't noticed when they stopped. Carter, Aubrey's fiancé, golf body and deal smile, bumped into me near a pillar and said my name like a bruise. Olivia, she loves you. Maybe she loves winning, I said. Love doesn't need powder. He opened his mouth and closed it, like a fish newly aware of the bowl's glass. I felt a quick pang for him, the honest kind you feel for someone who believed the show and has to walk home without the soundtrack. Sympathy isn't surrender. I let it exist. They took Aubrey out the staff hall, not the ballroom, a courtesy the manager and I agreed on. This wasn't theater. It was documentation. The ballroom exhaled as the last raffle closed, the applause polite and smaller. After the guests drifted out, the room looked like a city after snow, chairs skewed, napkins like drifts, the glitter of a night trying to remember what it was for besides shining. The waitress was rolling silverware by the service door when I found her. I never got your name, I said. Mara, she said, testing whether I'd treat it kindly. Mara, I repeated. You saved me. I told a truth on time, she said. Most nights we refill water and pretend people are kinder than they are. Tonight someone was. We were, I said. Together. Mara's smile came slow, like a bird testing air. The board huddled in a side room with stale coffee and good fear. Counsel recommended immediate suspension of access, retention of an external forensic accounting firm, and a donor communication that was both transparent and restrained. We voted. It was the fastest unanimous decision I'd seen from a group that once argued 20 minutes about font size on the annual report. I went home smelling like someone else's perfume and a field I once lay in while helicopters spoke above me. I put the napkin on my kitchen counter like a trophy and a warning, and stood staring at it long enough that the refrigerator breathed twice. In the shower, glitter bled down the drain as if the night could be rinsed to bone. I slept, badly, then better. Dreams arrived, left, returned with softer edges. By afternoon, counsel had secured the warrant, the lab had accepted the vials, and the forensic accounting firm had introduced themselves by asking for read-only access to everything with a number in it. Days unfold their own math. The audit. Stumbled over islands of irregularity. A vendor that resolved to a mailbox store. Reimbursements that looped back to a cousin. Internal controls bypassed by charm. The lab found a benzodiazepine cousin in wine residue, not illegal per se, but damning where it lived. Draft emails surfaced, my voice almost right. Delegating votes. Neighbors called to ask if I was okay in the careful tone of people who want proof their gossip was for my good. A reporter left a message using a soft question that hid a sharp hook. We issued a statement that walked a tightrope in flats. Investigation ongoing, controls functioning, mission steady. We did not try the case in public. We let our work stay louder than our wound. Carter came by with his apology folded into him like contraband. "I didn't want to see it," he said, voice shredded. She's always been so certain." "Certainty isn't truth," I said. "It's just volume." He nodded, small as a boy, and I remembered him handing me a beer once, years back, saying he liked the way I made the holidays feel less like a test. He had been a decent man. Decency isn't armor, but it's a start. The arraignment was a room full of echoes. Aubrey arrived in a blazer so sharply pressed it argued with the cuffs at her wrists. Her attorney wore the careful face of someone who knows the evidence has older bones than the narrative. They said misunderstanding, wellness, supplement, care. The judge said, "We'll see." Conditions: no contact with me, surrender passport, weekly check-ins. She walked out contained by rules and daylight. I walked into a different daylight, the boo kind that makes dust look honest. I went to the office where the scholarship decisions were piled on a table. "We need a new name for the fund," I said. "Our mother taught us legacy is the quiet goodness you repeat until it looks like air." "I move we name it for her." The motion passed with hands relieved to hold something true. Mara and I met in ordinary clothes for coffee that tasted like a clean room. "I got into nursing school," she said, trying not to smile big enough to look like she wanted anything. "You got in because you can hold a room steady," I said, "and because you tell the truth at the speed of harm." She looked at me like no one had ever named that out loud. "I want to fix what can be fixed." "Me too," I said. "Some fixes look like rebuilding. Some fixes look like refusing to be broken." Evenings stopped smelling like almonds. Mornings became trustworthy. The house creaked sincerities instead of threats. I found myself humming while making coffee like someone who believes in breakfast. The napkin lived in a small frame near the fridge, not as a shrine to fear, but as a receipt for courage. People talk about closure like it's a door that clicks. It isn't. It's a window you learn to open. Some days the sash sticks. On those days you push. Then the room remembers air. At the next fundraiser, new venue, sunlight honest through tall windows, we told the story of the mission with nothing. Powdered. Paddles rose like hands in a classroom where the teacher asks, "Who wants to help?" I spoke for 3 minutes about oversight and gratitude and the simple power of receipts. The crowd clapped at a normal temperature. What a relief to be ordinary. Letter came months later, the kind that lands on the counter like a coin on a table. Plea deal, tampering, fraud, restitution, barred from fiduciary roles for a long time. It didn't taste like triumph. It tasted like clean water, like being allowed to go on. I took the scholarship envelopes to the post office myself. We'd named the first cohort First Light. One was for a first-generation student whose mother cleaned offices at night and sang louder than vacuum cleaners. One was for a 19-year-old caregiver who slept in hospital chairs and still turned in lab reports on time. One was for a new American who wanted to study chemistry because chemicals can heal as well as harm. I tucked handwritten notes inside. "You belong here. Your choices are not smaller than theirs. Keep the receipts of your courage." Sometimes I drive past the country club for no reason but memory. The chandeliers still so light down the air. If I pause too long at the light, I can almost hear Aubrey's voice, gilded, sure, skilled at making her needs sound like everyone's gain. I don't turn in. The road ahead is honest under my tires. The night doesn't taste like almonds. Anymore. At home, I pass the framed napkin and touch the glass the way you touch a medal you keep in a drawer. Mara's postcard, white houses, blue sky, her scrunched handwriting, lives tucked into the frame's corner. Sometimes it's the small choices that matter most. She was right. The waitress risked looking foolish to save a stranger. I risked looking paranoid to trust a warning. Ward risked being impolite to move when I asked. Lynn risked being called rigid to love policy enough to use it like a shelter. Even Alvarez risked being too formal to insist on evidence over theater. It took a village of small risks to outweigh one person's polished harm. People still ask what I would tell someone who realizes the threat is sitting across their table smiling. I tell them this. Watch the edges. Predators choreograph privacy. They block line of sight. They forget to include you when they talk about you. They reach for your cup when they don't need a sip. They love policy until policy says, no, keep your face calm and your hands useful. Move the centerpiece and swap the glasses. Breathe steady. Choose your allies before the song changes. Trust the worker who risks their job to whisper in your ear. They see more than guests do. They know where the cameras point and where the light fails. Document like you're writing a road home. The raw. Truth can carry its own weight if you stack it properly, and when it's over, because it will end one way or another, remember to name the helpers. Gratitude isn't a mood, it's a discipline. Gratitude is how we remind the world what to repeat. The country club's ballroom hummed with lacquered laughter, silver chiming against china, and chandeliers stitching bright filaments of light into the parquet floor. I could feel the room tilt toward my sister the way a stage tips toward its star. Aubrey was built for curated light and curated praise. Around us, staff moved in precise arcs, the soft music of service smoothing every edge. I told myself, one night of smiling, one night of staying inside the lines, one night of pretending we were family and not a tangle of old wounds, pretending to be mended. A waitress set a leather-bound dessert menu by my plate, though dessert wasn't called yet, and when I opened it, a folded napkin slid into my lap. In rushed blue ink, I just saw your sister put something into your drink. Don't react. Switch glasses when she comes back. What happened next would shock the entire room, and break more than just the night if I blinked at the wrong moment. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. I didn't look up. My pulse kicked once and flattened. Training, taking the wheel. 15 years in military intelligence. Leaves two dependable gifts. A face that can be a locked room, and a mind that notices edges while pretending to admire centerpieces. 2 glasses sat in front of me. Identical stems. Identical wine catching the chandelier's fire. I shifted the eucalyptus in the centerpiece, and as my wrists crossed, glass whispered against linen. Mine became hers. Hers became mine. The napkin warmed in my fist the way truth warms when it's finally seen. Liv? Ward's voice skimmed my shoulder from the left. 2 knuckles tapped the back of my chair. The old signal from deployments and bad briefings. I'm here. No need to turn. He was a fellow board member, the quiet kind who knows bylaws better than biographies. You good? Fine, I said, and slid my phone into his palm. Screen dark. Text Lynn. Bar cameras, service corridor, cloakroom. Discreet. Ward didn't ask why. Ward didn't ask questions when answers were obvious. That was why he still had my trust. Across the table, Aubrey turned in a gold column dress that coaxed attention like sugar coaxes ants. Sister, she said, placing a manicured hand over her heart as if claiming a parcel of air. To family. She lifted the glass that had been mine and smiled with the kind of brightness that looks like love until you learn its real name. To family, I echoed, and raised the glass that would not put me to sleep. The MC introduced her like a headliner, tireless chair, donor whisperer, the woman who brought this miracle together. She stepped onto the low stage, palms up to catch the room's hush. Welcome, she said, honey over a steel comb. Tonight we honor legacy and integrity. She looked at me on integrity. Even from 10 paces, I felt the hawk shadow of it, legacy, integrity. For the length of a breath, my mouth tasted like our childhood kitchen, lemon oil on wood, our mother's voice saying, "Kindness is better with rules," the way she would smooth a tablecloth and then straighten our spines. Once upon a time, Aubrey and I were little, girls who shared a hardcover of fairy tales and a bedroom where we learned that someone always grabbed the prettier blanket first. We chose different uniforms as adults. Mine came with rank tabs and after-action reports. Hers came with sequins and donor lists. The quartet swelled, paddles lifted, money flew like well-fed birds. I didn't take my eyes off the margins, the way Aubrey's purse stayed near my chair as if gravity favored it. The way she angled when she passed my place setting, shoulder between me and the glasses. The barback's flushed apology about bumping her elbow near the service hall. The bartender's too tight jaw. It is a skill, watching without staring. It kept me alive in places where the ground threw metal upward. It has a way of bringing old deserts into nice rooms. The waitress drifted by again, brown hair tucked, jaw set like someone who'd practiced saying no and survived. She replaced my water with a new glass I didn't need. "Careful with the terrace step, ma'am," she said aloud. Then, softer than steam, security saw something. "Kitchen door. In 1 minute. Back wall left." "Thank you," I said with my eyes more than my voice. In my lap, the napkin was a hot coin. I stood the way women stand when they want to keep harmony. Ward stood too, the coincidence kind, and we slid along the wall's shadow. The kitchen swallowed us in heat and clangor, steam sighing, pans ringing, hands flying with choreographed urgency. Lynn was waiting near the ice machine with the head of security, Alvarez, both in suits plain enough to be anywhere, and faces that had seen. Nights like this and worse. Alvarez kept his voice low and steady. "Bar cam shows a small vial from your sister's purse, powder poured into a single glass. Service corridor shows her body-blocking line of sight while stirring with a cocktail straw. We'll need your consent to test both glasses. You?" "Have it," I said. "Test hers and test mine. The swap was after the tampering." Lynn's eyes, winter clear, flicked to mine. "We'd also like to open the purse she parked in the cloakroom earlier, with your okay to proceed with counsel." "Do it clean," I said. "Quiet, no spectacle unless safety demands it." "Copy," Alvarez said, already nodding to a staffer through the swinging door. Preliminary kits appeared like quick little truths, swabs, strips, the chemistry of betrayal. In under 5 minutes, thin lines bled into view, indicative of a benzodiazepine derivative. Not a courtroom verdict, but enough to shift posture. The bartender watched the bar cam clip with the grief of someone watching his workspace turned into a weapon. He scrubbed his station like the surface could remember integrity if he insisted. "Cloakroom cam has her retrieving the purse for 30 seconds, Lynn said, angling a tablet toward me. "Label on a vial has been scratched down." "Bored. Counsel?" I asked. "Already informed," she said. "Standing by with emergency measures to freeze privileged access." Outside the kitchen, Aubrey's voice rose and fell, all Charity's favorite words braided into a warm rope. She could lasso hearts with that rope. She'd been doing it since school assemblies. We went back through the shadow of the back wall. The event manager, smile perched, floated to the foot of the stage and murmured in Aubrey's ear. A motion toward the side doors. Aubrey passed the microphone like a queen lending a scepter and glided off stage, gold catching light the way bees catch pollen. I watched her shoulders. I'd known them square against truth before. When she was 12 and swore she hadn't broken our mother's milk glass. When she was 19 and swore she hadn't taken my car. When she was 27 and swore she was only managing things for me while reading my mail. In the corridor, counsel stood beside the event manager and Alvarez, the waitress in the corner, hands folded like she was keeping them from shaking. Aubrey entered on an inhale aimed at charm. "What's this?" She laughed, just enough air to claim misunderstanding even if the room burned. A safety issue, counsel said. Security observed potential tampering of a drink at your sister's place. Aubrey's face arranged itself into the performance of honesty. Softening eyes, lifted brow, concern draped over calculation. That's absurd. Liv, darling, are you okay? Her hand reached. I let it hang between us. Alvarez tapped the tablet. The bar cam footage ran without sound, the purse opening, the quick glint, the tilt, the stir. 1 minute of clear choreography. That's wellness, Aubrey said, pivoting. A supplement. She has anxiety. Stop, I said. Not loud, not soft. That word felt like sweeping glass off a floor where people might dance. The waitress found her voice. I saw you do it, she said. At the bar. I put the note in the dessert menu because I didn't know how else to help. I don't want trouble. I don't want anyone hurt either. Counsel opened a folder the color of a bruise. Effective immediately, your organization credentials are suspended pending investigation. Any attempt to interfere with evidence or contact witnesses will be referred to law enforcement. You can't do that, Aubrey said, brittle showing through gloss. I built this night. You think they came for bylaws? They came for me. Policies are what make nights like this safe, the event manager said, gentle as a good nurse, and absolute as a closed door. A staffer arrived with the purse in a bin, gloves neat. Inside, 2 small glass vials with labels rubbed down, a ledger with donor columns that did not match official books, drafted emails, unsent, written in my voice delegating proxy votes to Aubrey for efficiency during recovery, a forged signature that almost got my looping R right. Counsel's glance asked the necessary question. You didn't authorize any delegation? I didn't, I said. The room stilled. Space compresses differently when truth turns on. Outside, violins practiced optimism. Inside, Aubrey's smile cracked again, edge to edge now. Her eyes went to the door, always. Inventory for exit. I want to see my purse, she said again, smaller. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. Epilogue is a small word for a long road. In the weeks after the plea, I learned the anatomy of repair the way a medic learns tendons by feel. I met with the audit team every Tuesday at 9. Same room, same pot of coffee that tasted like burnt hope, same stack of reconciliations that got shorter and truer. We rebuilt vendor lists from zero. We installed 2-person sign-offs on every transfer, above a number that used to be considered too small to matter. We trained volunteers to spot the difference between enthusiasm and authority. We invited donors to read the policy manual with us in public, so the rules weren't secrets but shared promises. Boring saved us. I fell a little in love with boring. Aubrey. Sent 1 letter through counsel, a single page of neat handwriting that tried to sound like remorse, but mostly sounded like nostalgia for her best lines. I didn't answer. Some doors are kindest kept closed. Closure wasn't a gavel. It was a calendar, boxes checked with small right actions until the future accumulated again. On a clear Saturday morning, Mara came over wearing scrubs the color of mint. She had an exam that afternoon and wanted a quiet table. We quizzed pharmacology, across my kitchen island, half-life, contraindications, mechanisms of action. 2 women saying the names of chemicals that can heal or harm depending on dose and intent. We laughed when we remembered to. We didn't talk about the napkin. We didn't need to. The frame gleamed in the corner like a lighthouse that still worked. At dusk, I drove to the park where our mother used to walk laps with a stopwatch, timing, herself against no one. I sat on a bench and said out loud what I wished she could hear, that I named the fund for her, that kindness with rules held, that I was okay, that Aubrey would have to find her own version of okay without turning other. People into props? The sky went lavender, and then the blue of an old bruise healing. I went home. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications. I've learned that expensive rooms have the same hunger as cheap ones. People, lean toward the brightest person and hope a little of the light rubs off on them. That's how the ballroom felt the night I wrote the napkin. Like a planet system around 1 star in a gold dress. I was supposed to refill water and keep my head down. Then I saw the vial. What happened next would shock more than guests. It would force me to choose between my job and my conscience. I'm Mara. I've balanced trays on cruise ships, in airport lounges, at quinceañeras and black tie galas. The work changes uniforms, but not rules. Move quietly, solve problems before anyone names them, and vanish when the applause starts. That night, the club smelled like orchids and ambition. Our captain ran the floor like a conductor, me on the bar run, Tasha on the terrace, Luis at the carving station. We had the program memorized by minute marks. Gold dress, Aubrey, was the kind who knew which side of the room had cameras and which side had shadows. I clocked her in pre-service. The way she treated the clipboard like a prop. The way she grazed a glass and moved it 2 inches closer to a woman with the steady gaze of someone who doesn't drink fast. That woman, Olivia, wore attention like a coat she didn't ask for. It started small. Aubrey approached the bar with a smile I've seen melt rules. She asked for 2 glasses of the reserve, the one donors brag about. While our bartender turned to pull a fresh bottle, she tipped her wrist into her purse and palmed a tiny glass vial. I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't been aligning clean stems with the rail. The camera above us sees everything. So do floor, staff who've learned to keep their eyes traveling. She dumped powder into 1 glass like she was dusting a dessert. A quick stir with a cocktail straw. No hesitation. No shame. Then she angled her body to block sightlines and glided away toward Olivia's place setting. I've watched drunk men try smaller tricks. I've broken up mean whispers with a joke so no one bled. But this was different. This had timeline and intent. My hands went cold even in that hot room. I looked at the bartender. He didn't see it. Tasha didn't either. It was mine to act on. Rule 1 of service: protect the guest. Rule 2: protect your job. They don't always agree. I weighed both like plates. The scale tipped when Olivia lifted the glass to her mouth and then didn't drink. She set it down the way soldiers set things down. Careful, knowing weight. Wrote the note on the first paper I could find. A dessert menu liner. I slid it inside a leather menu and set it by her plate. I just saw your sister put something into your drink. Don't react. Switch glasses when she comes back. There's a way people read when they're deciding whether to trust you. It's not their eyes. It's their shoulders. Olivia's didn't drop. Her face didn't change. But her wrists crossed a minute later and 2 slim bases whispered against linen. If she was a civilian, she wore training like a bone. Everything. After that happened in parallel tracks, the fundraising script on stage, the emergency script in the back hall. While Aubrey worked the room with honeyed words, legacy, integrity, vision, I moved like a shadow. I told Captain what I'd seen. He gave me the kind of nod that says, "I hear you, but we need proof." Alvarez from security already had. The bar feed pulling. Lynn from council appeared as if summoned by policy. They didn't question me like a problem. They received me like a witness. We watched the footage together. Purse, vial, tilt, stir. Tiny motions, loud meaning. The test strip went lilac where it should have stayed pale. I swallowed the acid taste in my mouth. People use chemicals like knives because a knife looks like violence and a powder looks like care. They set the play, discreetly invite Aubrey off stage, keep donors calm, ask Olivia for consent to test both glasses. No cuffs unless escalation. We're trained for split-second timing in service, too. We just call it fire on the pass. I hovered near the service door as they brought Aubrey to the back. I don't enjoy watching people get confronted, but I needed to be there in case the truth needed a mouth. She tried the words I expected: supplement, wellness, anxiety. I thought of my mother counting my pills when I was 14, whispering the names to make sure they were right. Wellness is a holy word. I hate when people use it as camouflage. When they asked if anyone had witnessed the act, I stepped forward. My voice trembled once like a plate that slides and then finds the waiter's palm again. After, it steadied. I saw you at the bar. I saw you pour. I put the note in her menu. Aubrey's eyes hit me like thrown ice. I told the truth anyway. Alvarez and Lynn handled it without theater. That impressed me. They didn't want a spectacle. They wanted a chain of custody. That told me these were the kind of people who would keep a stranger safe after the room stopped clapping. Back on the floor, I kept working. That's another thing service teaches. Finish the tray in your hand even if the building shakes. I cleared appetizer plates. I refilled water. I brought coffee to a table where a woman whispered, "What's happening?" And I said, "The tiramisu is excellent tonight." Because sometimes the kindest thing is to hold a room steady while another room does the breaking. When it was over enough for the night, I rolled silverware by the service door to quiet my hands. Olivia found me. Up close, she looked like someone who'd had practice at surviving, the kind of practice that uses breath as a tool. She thanked me. People say that in 100 lazy ways. She said it like a report. Specific, complete, received. I slept light that night, expecting a call that said, "We're letting you go." It didn't come. Instead, Alvarez asked for my statement in the morning. Lynn texted that they'd handle retaliation if anyone tried. A service job that protects the servers? Novel. When I took my break, I Googled benzodiazepines until the letters blurred. Half-life, onset, interactions. Knowing names steadies me. It's why I applied to nursing school. Chemicals can heal. People can too. The days that followed were a study in what happens when policy does its job. The club issued a calm statement. The audit people showed up with quiet shoes and sharper eyes. Donors didn't vanish. Some of them even asked for the policy manual like it was a book club pick. I watched Olivia from afar once in the lobby. She walked like the floor had stopped tilting. A week later, she invited me for coffee. "You saved me," she said. "I told a truth on time," I said. She smiled like I'd passed a test I didn't. No, I was taking. We quizzed each other on drug classes for my entrance exam across her kitchen island. She explained chain of custody. I explained therapeutic windows. We laughed about how both our jobs depend on people not noticing our best work. I left with a used copy of a pharmacology text and a sticky note on the cover. Keep the receipts of your courage. The arraignment came and went with the heat of a room full of lawyers and a judge who kept saying, "We'll see." I took my exam the same afternoon. When I got to the section on benzodiazepines, my pen moved without hesitation. Some answers are muscle now. Here is the part no one sees in the headlines. How repair looks. It looks like retraining the floor staff on what tampering can be. It looks like teaching new hires that wellness is never something you pour into someone else's cup without consent. It looks like a bartender scrubbing the bar with more care than he used to scrub his conscience. It looks like security fixing a blind spot we didn't know we had. As for me, I still work doubles. I still listen to people pronounce pain and joy into their cocktails. But I carry a small notebook in my apron now, not for orders, for names, the names of things that can hurt, and the names of choices that keep people safe. The Night of the Napkin sits at the top of the first page like a chapter title. Choose the guest. Sometimes I see Olivia at the club's new venue. Daylight, windows, a program that breathes. She speaks for exactly 3 minutes about oversight and gratitude. People clap like regular people. Then she walks off stage and stands with the volunteers pouring coffee like she's exactly where she wants to be. If you're a server reading this, here's what I'll tell you. Watch without staring. Trust your stomach when a vial looks like it doesn't belong. Find the person whose job is to believe you. If they don't, write the note anyway. Be the person who acts at the speed of harm. And if you're the person at the table who gets a warning tucked inside a menu, believe the worker. We see more than you think. As for the gold dress, I don't hate her. Hate is heavy. I prefer receipts, the kind you staple to a night to prove it happened and to teach the next person where the edges are. I keep mine folded in the back of my pharmacology book, a photocopy of the napkin, blue ink faded, still legible. It reminds me that small pieces of paper can change the shape of a room. I start nursing school next term. Olive scrubs, comfortable. Shoes, a pen that doesn't betray me. Maybe I'll work nights in a ward where chemicals heal and vigilance is a love language. If I ever have to write another note, I hope it says, "Your nurse just doubled your pain-free hours. Don't react. Just breathe. Until then, I'm here, replacing water, rolling silverware, and watching the edges so the center can be safe." Of course, her mother said. The world is clever sometimes. They talked about tomatoes and the unfairness of peaches that pretend to be ripe. They did not say the name of the company or the number 80. They said ordinary things until the ordinary felt like faith again. Spring dragged its feet toward summer. The escalators did what escalators do when left alone. They escalated at the right times and stayed where they were when they should. Vendors got paid. Usage got counted. The quarterly call was boring in a way that made responsible people lift their heads like prairie dogs and sniff the air for the scent of competence. At the end of June, Althea sent a 2-line email. The board wants you to consider a longer-term role. Design from the inside. Autonomy promised. Arrogance discouraged. Leora read it twice. Once as the young woman who had learned to swallow resentment like aspirin. Once as the woman who had learned to choose work that didn't ask her to hide her care. She wrote back, "Let's talk." First, audit. They talked. It turned out that one of the most radical things you can do in a building full of ambitious people is insist on the schedule that keeps everyone honest. They offered her a role that wasn't a title so much as a promise: custodian of escalators. Tender of numbers, listener for quiet fraud. The actual words were different, but the posture was the same. She said yes, with conditions that sounded like poetry to her and like chores to anyone who prefers confetti. No reasonably practicable, unless a human can define the practicality without using fog. Attestation time to the reality of how data travels. Carve-outs for holidays that didn't assume the world only celebrated one kind of joy. An obligation to teach juniors how to write a clause that could hold a building up. On her first day inside this new shape of work, she opened a drawer and found a blank notebook. She wrote a line at the top of the first page and underlined it once. Paperwork is a promise between strangers. Then, below it, smaller, fulfill it. A message pinged her screen. Iris, with a photo of 3 lopsided tomatoes and a caption, "They're ugly and perfect." Leora stared at the picture until she felt the happy kind of ache behind her eyes. She walked to the window. The basil looked like it had hired a stunt double. She pinched 2 leaves and rubbed them between finger and thumb. Scent is a kind of proof. The phone rang again. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail and watched the transcript arrive like a telegram from a country she didn't plan to visit. "Ms. Merrick, this is Braith." She stopped reading. Some stories have endings that do not ask for epilogues. She deleted the message. In August, she took a week and went to the sea. She brought 1 book and didn't finish it, not out of boredom but out of mercy for the place where the words ended. She watched an elderly couple teach a child how to hold a kite in wind that wanted to carry everything away. The string tightened, the kite fought, then the child learned the difference between resistance and flight. When she came home, the city had decided that it needed thunderstorms in the afternoons. Rain washed the dust off things that could be washed. Leora opened the laptop, checked the audit calendar. and smiled at the small click in her chest when the dates matched the world. There were emails from people she'd never meet. Short and too sweet, calling her brave like the word cost them nothing. She didn't forward them to anyone. She didn't save them to a folder called Praise. She closed them and sent 2 notes to juniors who had written their first memos without the adjective, innovative. She told them they were correct. And that correct was enough, on a Wednesday. That looked like most Wednesdays. Althea stuck her head into Leora's office. Glass walls, one plant that had survived on character alone, and said, "Walk?" They circled the block and talked about something that had nothing to do with work. A movie where the hero learns to say what he means before the credits. When they looped back, Althea paused outside the door. "I'm glad you said no to revenge," she said. "Revenge eats the part of you that knows how to measure," Leora said. "And I need that part." Althea nodded once, in that way of hers that made even a small motion feel like an oath. That night, Leora wrote a postcard to herself and did not mail it. The card said one sentence, "Move precisely and fix things." She propped it on the counter next to the basil, where it could watch her wash dishes. In some other building, someone would be starting a plan that would make their badge beep in the wrong tone. In some other room, the word velocity would excuse what it couldn't explain. She could not fix all of them. She could fix the ones that turned up on her calendar. On the first day of the next quarter, she woke before the alarm again, not because worry wrenched her upright, but because a habit can become a kind of hope. She made coffee and watched the sky argue itself into blue. She opened the schedule and checked the thresholds and listened to the apartment be a creature. Then she walked to her desk and began. She did not need a hook. She had a job. She did not need a spotlight. She had a schedule. And when the numbers came in honest and the escalators stayed where they should, and the vendors got paid on time and the buyers did not blush in public, she allowed herself something small and strange. She enjoyed it. There is a way of living that is nothing like winning and everything like keeping a promise. Leora practiced it. It practiced her back. On her way out that evening, she stopped by the front desk and set a paper cup on the counter. The guard, the same one from the morning of the red light, looked up with a start. "For you," she said. "Not your fault." He smiled, surprised. "You're still here?" "I'm exactly where I should be," she said, and stepped into the evening, which had the good manners to become beautiful just then, as if the weather had finally decided to agree with the paper.